I just think I made a really dumb decision. Welcome to a new video. The last video was beautifully edited, well thought out. This one is going to be pure chaos. So, my dumb idea is to try and sew a Regency dress in a day, but I don't currently have a full day because it's 1:20 in the afternoon, so we're going to go for 12 to 18 hours. That's kind of the normal time that I'd be awake, anytime between 12 to 18 hours. So we're going to try and sew this dress in the hours that I would normally be awake. This is probably going to be a chaotic video of chaos and fabric everywhere. Currently my sewing room is immaculate because I tidied it yesterday, but I expect by the end of today it will not look the same. I think that's all. I'm technically cheating because I cut out my pattern 2 days ago, so the pattern's all cut out and the mock-up is made, so I know it fits. I'm literally just sewing it today. But yeah, let's start. Welcome to Lila on the floor. I'm sat on the floor because I have my pile of fabric. So my pattern is the Laughing Moon pattern. It's the ladies' round or trained gown with a high stomach front. I've gone for view C or B, I think. It's basically, it's got the longest train and short puff sleeves, and the bodice is, there's 3 bodice options: a fully gathered, a gathered, and one with a dart or just darted. I'm going with the ones with just the darts in. So kind of think Daphne's debutante gown from Bridgerton episode 1, like very tailored, white. That's the vibes we're going for. I've got all of my pattern pieces cut out, and the fabric is like this cream kind of rose fabric. It's old curtains from a charity shop. As normal, very Lila thing. We're going for old curtains, and soon it's going to be a Regency gown. I have my mock-up here. I did it in old bed sheets. We're really being eco-friendly, old bed sheets and old curtains. I had a bit of a panic because when I tried this on it was too small, but then when I tried it on with my stays, it was the right size. This pattern, I did have a bit of a struggle with the sizing. I think because it's American and I live in the UK, I was like, what's going on? Because on this pattern, I'm a 12, but like me, normal, is kind of like 8 to 10, like maybe even 6 to 10, depending what size. So like this pattern really confused me, but I think because it's also historical, it maybe runs a bit small. If I did it again, I'd definitely cut the 14 instead of the 12. But we're just going to sew with a smaller seam allowance and we'll be fine. You've got to have some sugar while you're sewing. Like, please tell me this is just a universal sewer thing. Like, while you're sewing, you've got to have snacks. Like, sewing equals snacks. They've changed the Haribo recipe. It's fruitier, apparently. Like, they use real fruit juice now. And I'm kind of obsessed with them. So this will be gone within the next like 3 seconds. I've already got distracted by scrolling through Instagram and sorting out my business money, which I don't need to do right now, but now at least my business money's sorted. Good news, the pack of Haribos are finished. I have 1 sweet left. And now I'm trying to decide what music I need to listen to. Because you know, you've got to get the vibes right. We've got the snacks, we've got the sewing, now we need the music. Well, we haven't got the snacks because I ate them all, but we did have the snacks. I'm thinking, because we're doing a Regency gown, whether I should listen to Bridgerton, the unofficial musical. I'm thinking that, so I'm thinking I'll put Bridgerton, the unofficial musical on, and we can dance around and sew to that, because you know, the Regency vibes will then be there. So here are all of our pattern pieces. We have there is where our sleeve pieces are. We have the massive tie piece, and then all of the bodice pieces, and also the skirt piece. The skirt piece, that's just the back, and it's like folded into 4 already. It's absolutely massive. I think I'm probably going to start by sewing the bodice together. I'm not too sure, actually. I'm undecided. The bodice is more confusing, but because I've done the mock-up, I know how to do that. And the skirt is just like massive, but because it's new, it's like more interesting. So I'm not sure if I'll do the bodice or the skirt first. I think I'll probably sew the bodice together first, because that's the most like confusing part, and whilst my concentration is like really good, I'll focus on that. I also need to grab an iron because I'm gonna have to press all of the seams. So I'm gonna go grab an iron, and then all my machine's threaded and everything, so then I'm gonna start sewing the bodice and the sleeves together. I was just about to start, and then I was like, I probably should actually read the instructions, because I am that person that gets a pattern and then just won't read the instructions and then wonders why it's gone wrong. But they're really good instructions. Like, this gown is absolutely incredible. They've got a massive like instruction booklet. It's like 40 pages long, because you have like all of these different gown styles that you can do. So I am going to read the instructions before I sew. I found this pattern really easy to follow and also really easy to read. It was just so simple, and the illustrations helped so much working out what I needed to sew together. I then started to sew the lining together. The fabric that I was using for the lining was just the curtain lining. It was a very thin voile. I made the decision that the front pieces of the lining should actually be from the thicker fabric, because that is what would be stretched across the bust at the front to tie together, and I just felt like the voile was going to end up fraying. You can see here I'm just pinning the voile onto the slightly thicker bit that I used for the crossover section. I actually really enjoyed kind of pinning this pattern together. You can also see on the arm piece I've added about 2-3 centimeters to the length of the strap. This is actually really easy to do on this pattern because it is a puff sleeve, so it just means that the puff of the sleeve will be gathered less. I didn't have to change the sleeve pattern at all. This was because when I tried the mock-up on, the sleeve was just a little bit too tight. In addition, I decided to sew with a smaller seam allowance just to give some of that extra space to the entire garment. And if you've watched my prom dress video, you will know how much the importance of pressing really means to me. I spent ages pressing down all of these seams, making sure they were all lying flat. This just ensures the garment has a really professional finish. Also, pressing is just so satisfying, especially on this lovely cotton fabric where you just get really crisp lines from pressing them properly. We have the lining. I'm very glad that I sewed the side panels in the thicker fabric because this lining is just so thin and it's fraying already. But we are gonna try this on because I haven't actually tried this on since I made the arm adjustments. And let's have a look. I feel like I've sewn the straps on the wrong way around. So we're gonna have a look at that. I've definitely sewn these straps on the wrong way around, I think, because they aren't quite sitting right. I'm gonna compare this to my mock-up and see if I have actually sewn the straps on the wrong way around, but apart from that, it's all looking good. I've definitely got more arm room, which is great, so that was a good move. I think I might have to unpick these and re-sew them because they're definitely on the wrong way around. So we're gonna sort all of that out, and then we are gonna repeat the exact same process that we have with this bodice. We're gonna repeat it with the bodice, sew it together, and then see where we're up to. It's currently around 3 o'clock. I've been sewing for an hour and a half, so we are getting it done. And we're unpicking the lining. I don't know how I made this mistake because I didn't make it on the mock-up, but I definitely did sew the straps on the wrong way round. I could tell just as soon as I put it on that it was not sitting properly. So I had to unpick the straps, which was really hard on this very thin voile fabric because it was just fraying everywhere. But I sewed them back on and the whole problem was rectified. Honestly, the worst bit was the fact that this was voile fabric. if you've never had voile before, it's that kind of very thin fabric that you often get on like net curtains. It frays if you look at it, so trying to unpick it with scissors was impossible, and I actually think I had to recut one of the pieces. But once it was all unpicked, I could get to sewing the outer layer of the bodice together. I had to unpin all of my pieces from the pattern, and then I just repeated the pinning process. I really love this curtain fabric. It had a beautiful double-sided quality to it. As I said before, I ended up using the inside of the curtain as the outside of my garment because it was more matte, and the roses just had this gorgeous shiny quality. I really like how this gave a two-toned look to the final dress. From a distance it looks like it's just a plain cream dress, but then if you come up closer you can see this faint rose pattern. As you can tell, there is a lot of pinning and a lot of sewing, just straight small lines on this garment. Once all of the seams were sewn, I trimmed them down with the pinking shears just to make sure that it didn't fray, and I repeated the ironing process. It was definitely easier ironing the thicker bodice layer because there wasn't anything that was going to fray. Once I ironed all the seams, I had some seam allowance that I needed to press over so that I could top stitch it. I then got the lining layer and the outer layer and pinned them together. For this bodice, there was a bagging out method, which meant that I sewed all of the outside seams together with the garment inside out, and then when it was sewn together, I turned it right side out, and it was beautifully lined, and you can't see any of the raw seams from the inside. Here I'm just carrying that on by sewing the two layers together. This was actually really easy and really quick. The bodice, once I got the basic parts of it done, was actually fairly easy. Once all of this was sewn together, I decided to stitch the armholes down because they hadn't been sewn down in the last part. I just pinned them together and then with my sewing machine quickly went around and made sure that they weren't going to fall open. This seam would be finished off later on when I sew the puff sleeve into the armhole. I've sewn the bodice together. I'm just going to try it on now and see how it fits. It's definitely much better with that extra arm room that I added in. So then, because this is a Regency bodice, what will happen is this ties across the front, and then there's an extra bit which flaps up, which I'm about to make now. The back is looking good, the front is looking good. It's all coming together. Plan of action next. Make the bit that flaps up and the sleeves, and then the bodice will be done. Here I'm doing those final bodice bits as I said. This is the flap that folds up to cover the opening. It's literally just a square bit of fabric that you sew 2 darts into, finish off all of the edges with a top stitch, and then that is really it. You also have to sew 2 little loops of fabric, which is how you kind of tie the garment together. But apart from that, this was really quick and easy. The hardest bit was I was doing this at night and the light in my sewing room had broken, so I was using a lamp from downstairs to kind of shine a light just on my sewing machine. The bodice is completely sewn and I have done one sleeve. This sleeve took me far too long to do. I think I had to unpick it like 3 times, but it's done, and now I'm going to move on and do sleeve number 2. I'm hoping now that I know what I'm doing and now I know what not to do, I'll be quicker. I don't know if I'll get it done today because it's currently 8 o'clock, but we've still got 4 to 5 hours of sewing left, probably 4, over 4 hours of sewing left, so we should be good. And then I've got some time tomorrow morning as well. We haven't hit 12 hours yet. I think I've been sewing for about 5 hours probably because I had some breaks and stuff, so we're still on 12 hours. We can get this done in 12 hours, so yeah, on to some more sewing. Sewing the second sleeve was definitely quicker than sewing the first. The first thing that you have to do is go around the pattern and mark all of the notches so that you can line the sleeve up properly with the bodice. First of all, I sewed 2 gathering stitches at the top of the sleeve. This is what you gather to make the beautiful puff.
Then when you're done, you have to do this at the bottom of the sleeve as well. Then when this is all done, I sew the edges of the sleeve together to make a tube and then sew it into the actual garment hole. I kind of gathered it as I pinned it in. I started by pinning kind of the top of the sleeve to the top of the armhole and then gathered it up and kept doing this until I got to the bottom.
If you're wondering why my hair is suddenly grown, it's because these clips are taken over 2 months later. So I was indeed right. My stupid idea was very stupid. One, because I don't think I actually had 12 hours where I could sew my Regency dress. I did have 12 hours. I was just also trying to do other things that needed to be done before I could sew, so those things kind of took up the space. However, I remember how many hours it took me to do all of that. If I remember correctly, it was about 6 to 8 hours, which means that I have 4 to 6 hours left. I'm gonna say I have 4 hours left because I think that's probably a reasonable amount of time from the stuff that I've got left to do. I remember last time I was filming this video, it was like last minute before I was going somewhere, and I'm going on holiday tomorrow and I have half a day to sew, which is today, so I decided in my chaoticness to pick up this chaotic video, which honestly, instead of being trying to sew a dress in 12 hours, it should just be rushing to sew a dress before I've got to go somewhere or do something important, because that is honestly what this video has turned into. I am really hoping I get this done by the time I go on holiday. I really should be able to, because I don't have that much left, but I said that last time and hey look, it never got done. But instead of listening to me jabber on about how it's 2.5 months later, I am just gonna sew and keep on sewing, and hopefully I can take this dress on holiday with me. I can't remember where I was on my updates, but the things that I have left to do now is I've got to pleat the skirt fabric together. The bodice is completely done. I've literally just got to pleat the skirt, sew the skirt together and hem the skirt. Then I can add the buttons and fastenings and I'm done.
Here I'm just sorting out all of my pattern pieces again because I couldn't really remember what I had or hadn't used. I also got all of my skirt pieces out because that was the next thing that I was going to do. The skirt is made up of 3 parts. You can see this is one of the parts here, and the second part I just placed down. I actually pleated the second part before my 2-month break, so for this part lying underneath I literally just copied it. For the skirt you have 2 of these pleated parts which form the back of the skirt, and then you have one basically completely square panel which has no pleats in, which is the front. You then have 2 side seams and 1 centre back seam.
I have now pinned all of the pleats down, and what I'm going to do is sew the pleats together and then sew all of the skirt panels together so I have one continuous tube of fabric.
I sewed just 1 line of stitching which kept all of the pleats in place, and I then moved on to attaching all of the skirt panels together. This included sewing the lining and the outer layer all together so that all of the raw edges were enclosed inside the skirt.
I now have all of the skirt sewn. I have this huge tube of fabric that is really quite long. I have done the lining and I've also done the fabric that will be showing from the outside. What I now need to do is iron all of this, trim up the seams, and then I'm going to get on to sewing this onto the bodice and then hemming it. I have only been doing this for I think 40 minutes, so we are definitely on track to getting this done in 12 hours spread across the space of like 2.5 months, but it's still 12 hours.
Here I'm just doing the final ironing and tidying up of all the seams. I was using a pretty tiny board for quite a massive skirt, but I couldn't be bothered to go get our massive ironing board from the garage outside. Here I am just pinning the bodice and the skirt together and doing my final bit of sewing.
So we are on 2 hours for time that I've been sewing. All that I have left to do, which is what I'm going to do now, is sew the straps onto the bodice so I can close it at the front, and then I need to hem. Before I hem, I'm going to try the dress on with my Regency undergarments and see how it fits. So I'm gonna go sew all of these ties on and then try it on.
Here I'm just sewing all of the finishing touches on. This includes the belt loops, the ties, and also the waistband, which you tie in a bow to make sure that everything stays together. I can't believe that I actually managed to get this all sewn within the space of 12 hours, but this final push actually didn't take as long as I thought.
This is my first try on. I'm just sorting out this bit here because it's going to be pulled down a bit to give this nice neckline. So I'm just working out where I need to pin this. But all the pleating is done at the back and the puff sleeves, and I just love it so much. I can't wait for a full reveal. It's got a beautiful train on it. The train is absolutely stunning, and it's giving off the perfect Regency vibes. All I have to do now is hem it, and then I am completely done and ready to take it away with me. In an ode to the Haribos in the first half, my latest snack is Yorkshire puddings. We're going away, so we're using up loads of our food, and I just had 6 Yorkshire puddings as my lunch. I can't believe that I've actually got this done in 12 hours. If we say the last time I had sewn for 8 hours, that gave me 4 hours to take me up to 12. And I think I would have only been sewing for 3.5 hours by the end at the most. So we definitely made this dress in 12 hours. Right, I'm gonna go hem this and then I will see you for the reveal.
Hemming this actually took ages, despite what this very short clip shows, mainly because I had to hem the outer layer and also the petticoat, but it was finally done in time for me to take it away.